Hi, everybody. Welcome to our little conversation with my favorite person to have conversations with, Heidi. We've done a few of these. What'd you say?
We have lots of good ones coming.
Yeah. We were just talking before this, and I was like, oh, we gotta go on because this is gonna be helpful. So, um, hopefully this is working. I know a few of you plan to be here. I hope I can see if people comment on Facebook this time, but um, you never know because it does weird things. But so this is our conversation we are calling tending to our individual and collective wounds. And let me just say, I'm home alone with my son and inside the house, usually in my cabin. So there may be some outside noises. So my apologies if so, like the phone ringing. um, anyway, that's the way it
Happy
is.
to mention.
Yeah, right. So anyway, we wanted to, I mean, I asked Heidi if she'd be willing to talk with me about that, that the what we're all kind of experiencing, she's experiencing, I'm experiencing, a lot of us are experiencing just this need to heal. And so we're going to just talk about what that means, how we can kind of move through that ourselves, and a way to kind of do that work together through this class we're offering called Into the Light, a 6-month soul journey, which is based on my book, Tools for the Awakening Soul, a guide to activate your intuition, uncover your life's purpose. And so Heidi and I are going to be guiding a group of people together through that. But so yeah, we were just, let me just see, somebody may have just said something. Anyway, we were just talking about why we wanted to call it tending to our individual and collective wounds. And I'll start by saying, when anything happens in my life around me, I kind of look at it, and I look at it from the perspective of why is this happening and what's the lesson I can be learning from it. And one of the things that happened most recently, which I've shared, is our hen being attacked by a fox and survived. She survived, but it was close. It was very close. And the vet was kind of surprised because she was very wounded. Nothing serious, but just a lot of wounds externally. But my husband scared the fox away. It dropped her from its jaws. We've been tending to her. We had her inside for a while. Now we have her in the coop, but she sleeps inside at night. She can't be with the other chickens because they pecked at her, or the rooster tries to mount her, and all this stuff. But she's getting better. We weren't sure if she was going to get better, but she is. She's going to be okay. So, but that I realized, I'm like, well, it's very interesting. And I started thinking, well, that is how a lot of us feel. Like we've been attacked, and and instead of, pushing forward and kind of, certainly I know this because I've been told this by people I get energy healing from. Like, when you've been in battle, and it does feel like a battlefield out there, a spiritual battlefield, even though from a higher perspective, we don't want to think of it that way necessarily. But when you're fighting and fighting and fighting, and standing up for truth and speaking and putting yourself out there, we get tired, and also there's some attacks. I just did a video about that. I certainly have been attacked for speaking, and so but we need to go like the hen. We need to allow ourselves time to go inside, to tend to our wounds, which can be really hard to do, to tell ourselves it's okay to stop and to rest. I certainly have a hard time with that. So that's what, I've been certainly thinking about that a lot. And sometimes when we don't stop, what will happen? Our bodies will manifest it. And our bodies are going to manifest something that's wrong, because that's like, if you're not going to stop, the body will make us stop. So how do we do that, right? How do we give ourselves permission to stop and rest and heal? And then when we're giving ourselves permission, how do we sit with that discomfort when we've been taught to just numb those feelings of things that don't come up, that don't feel good, that come up, about the shadows, about the, all the fears, the doubts, the worries, the traumas from our childhood, from our past lives? How do we allow ourselves to go through that healing process and still feel safe, and how so our inner children feel safe?
I have that same question in my mind in terms of how do I refer to them? Because I've been working with, multiple, I feel like I have multiple personality disorder at times because,
Yeah.
I'm working with my 3-year-old and my 9-year-old. And as I refer to them, they're like all my little inner children because there's different points along the path that
Yeah.
there was either a wound or there's a place where we're you in all those different places. So
Yep.
I hear you on the inner children. It's fun to watch you work that through because I've been having that same thing the last couple of weeks as I've been
Yep.
healing.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Yeah. So I know that you've been on, I mean, you've been on that journey yourself. You know, I've been on that journey, and we're, you know, we're going to be walking people through this journey in the Into the Light class, which is really what this book, here it is about. Is, you know, a guide. I've designed it to guide people through this soul transformation process and moving, you know, in a very sequential way of starting with quieting the mind, coming up with a vision of how you want to feel in your life, um, then working through the fears and the doubts and the worries that will come up and say why you can't, shouldn't, won't have that sort of vision come to fruition, and learning about that, what that vision is. It's about vibration, it's about resonance, about the law of attraction, and then a lot of time working through the ego, a lot of, you know, what are the stories from childhood, the beliefs that parents probably taught us that are coming up, what are the all the things that we tell ourselves that are separating from the ego, and then moving through how to trust our intuition to guide us, how to open our third eye, different ways to do that, angels, spirit guides, Akashic Records. And so, you know, Heidi's read the book, and it's exciting to think we're going to be walking people through. I'm excited because it's a really powerful way for me to teach this in another way.
Well, as you were talking about the chicken and the process that you've had to take the chicken through in terms of protecting her from herself and protecting her from the flock and protecting her from the oppressive, wounded patriarchal rooster that won't leave her alone and is trying to, you know, like it's so similar to just us walking in our normal lives trying to tend to ourselves in the way that we're trying to tend to ourselves, and we have to really protect ourselves. We really have to carve out time to really give ourselves time and space to do those things and separate from all the other things that keep us from doing the work and from really letting the true healing happen, you know. And so you are creating an environment for that chicken to be able to help her from herself and to protect her from her peers and all of those different things to help her so that she can continue on the path to her own healing. And that is such a blessing for her. But it's also sort of like what we're going to do with this book club kind of thing, that was course that we're doing, because, you know, we want to do this work. We know that things are coming up. Things have been coming up for a few years. Maybe things have been coming up for their whole lives. And now in this time, we were just talking before we got on Facebook Live about the retrograde, all the planets that are in retrograde, and the energy that allows for really cool opportunities for healing. Because as the planets go retrograde, I see it as when you're riding a horse. I'm a horse girl, and when you're riding a horse and you're doing your thing, and then you want the horse to stop, you can pull on the reins, and that just like pulls on their face, and there's no connection there.
Yep.
But you can also then stop and just bring yourself inward and rock your hips forward and connect with the horse's hind end. So the horse that's going along will stop and slow from the inside out, from the back end forward. And so while they are moving back and moving their energy back and down, they're still moving forward. And so when you do that, when the planets go retrograde and everything slows down, it gives us a chance to stop and get out of fight or flight even more. And just taking time to get out of fight or flight is a process. And then having a group, having space held for you to actually then slow down and receive the medicine of these planets in retrograde. It's not always a terrible thing. We feel like you were saying at the beginning, where the cultural push, move, forward. And it's okay to stop and rest and to go into a little bit of a hibernation, of a fertile void, and let these things bubble up to the surface. And then they bubble up to the surface and we don't know what to do with them, and we get overwhelmed, and then we stuff them back, and then we go back to busy, crazy, disassociated on whatever it is, Instagram, Netflix, food, whatever it is that we use to not feel.
Yes.
And so having had each other to to go through this process of writing the book and having up all of those same cycles and things came up for you as you were writing and doing all of the things.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
As I was reading and editing and all of that, I was experiencing all of the pieces. And so to go through it all and have support and a container and a structure to hold you while these things are coming up so they don't get stuffed back. Because, like, here's the time. Like, right now is the time. Your chicken didn't have 6 months to get better. She needed to get better right then.
Yeah.
And we all do. The more that you can say yes to yourself, the more that you can practice self-love, self-trust, self-care, self-acceptance, self-compassion, all of the things so that we can tend to our daily souls.
Yeah. Yeah.
Through the guidance in your book, with a structure, with a team, with people holding our hands together to do it, that is how we get real lasting change.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, thinking like animals, they have so much to teach us. The analogy of the horse, the analogy of the chicken. It's like thinking about the chicken. It's like she wants to be with her flock so we have to let them out separately. We have to let her out in the yard, which we do now. We didn't at first, but then we let the other chickens out. We try to blend them out together, and they go after her. So when she's out, she goes over to the run that they're in, their little run, and she stands there. She's like wants to be with them. Her natural instinct is to want to be part of the flock. That's true for us as humans as well. And there's a whole lot more to say about that. But in terms of healing, it's like we don't want to stop and go inside and be away from the world sometimes, because just like the chicken, it's like we want to feel included. We want to feel like that's our safety. Like we're protected by our tribe. But there are times when it's just not safe. It's just not safe for us to do that. And I think, from personal experience, I have certainly, I know what that feels like. And, I think for many people, sometimes not even just about safety, but about, in terms of it's not, we neglect tending to our inner beings because of some other fear of what might I uncover if I allow myself to look inward. Am I going to be safe to continue with my daily life, or am I going to be in a crumpled heap on the floor, not able to get up? Because I might, if I go into this stuff, am I going to be able to get back up again? That's a very real thing for a lot of people. And I've talked to people who have this book, and they've said, I want to get to it. I just haven't gotten a chance to read it yet. Like, it's there. I just keep waiting I haven't picked it up yet, or I've started it, but I haven't gotten back. And if that's you listening, I encourage you to check out this class, which I posted in the link here, because that procrastination is probably a little bit of a fear of, and it's not, and the ego isn't all bad. The ego is also trying to protect us, right? It's rooted in that inner child. It's like, what the ego does is irrational, because even though, like, we know meditating and, connecting with our higher selves is a good thing. It's like, we know that's good for us, but there's a part of us that's, well, this is different. Like, if we're not used to it, it's like the ego says, this is different. What's going to happen to Rachel or to whoever if she starts to do this? Is she still going to be safe? So different equals unknown, which equals scary, which can equal bad. And so in my view, it's really about just taking a tiny little step forward and just making it not a big deal. So whether or not you take this, journey with us in the class, just pick up the book if you have it. And if you don't have it, you can pick it up and just say, I'm just going to read a few pages, or I'm just going to try the future self writing exercise, which is the most important one in the book, in my view. And write down a vision, positive present tense of how I want to feel. I'm just going to take a few minutes. Doesn't have to be a long time. I'm trying to find it in here, somewhere in here. And then I'm going to see, just how it goes. And then I can go back to doing whatever I was doing before that. And that's a good way to kind of work in these I always talk about this, but it applies to everything. These outer concentric circles are like, okay, I just did this. Am I still safe? Okay, yes, I'm still safe. I just did a few little things. Now maybe I can try again. Maybe this applies to, like, maybe I can go sit down to quiet my mind tomorrow. Am I still safe? How did I feel good when I did that? Maybe I should do it again. Maybe I could. So it's a process of really working with that delicate inner child to make sure that we're safe, that we feel safe. So it's an amazing phenomenon to watch and to witness over and over and over again. I see it over and over with people.
And I have looked at some of the scariest things that could possibly be possible
Yes.
in the last year and a few months.
Yes,
So,
you have.
all of my greatest, worst fears about what could be true have either happened or been true.
Yeah.
And here I am.
Mm-hmm. Still showing up.
Still here.
Very brave.
And I am better off every single day because of it. I am freer. I'm happier. I am more grateful. I am more connected. I'm more in my body. Like, so by looking at those things and seeing them and having it be and all of that, and there are still days, that because the more you see, the more you see.
Yeah.
And so, but you're surprisingly okay. And there are still days when it gets really hard and I start to wonder, maybe I need to, and so I rest and I tend and I take care of myself and I have to maybe put things aside or whatever. But the other end of it is joy and freedom and excitement and happiness and my physical container changes.
Yeah.
My physical body is stronger. I have more endurance. I feel better. I can show up more. I can take on more. I can commit to more and be confident that I'm going to have it in the tank because of the way that I'm taking care of myself and because of what I'm healing and transmuting and moving on.
Yeah, 100%. I was talking to a friend the other day, and it's interesting how just things keep coming up, and we were talking about just some money issues she was having, and she was sharing this experience she had with a family member, and it was really triggering her. And initially, there was it was emotion, tears, and initially we, on the surface, it was like, oh, I've got some money, I got to work through my money limiting belief. But it really, but when we talked about it, I said to her, it's really, I don't think it's about the money, it's about abandonment. Like, it was about this family, well, won't give the name, but it was about, like, she had felt like really connected with this person, and this person was in a different financial situation than she was, and she started feeling like not connected to this family member as much, and that was very sad to her. And it's like, well, it's not about necessarily jealousy. It was really about other, abandonment. And she's like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. So what happens is with I believe at least, and I see it with clients, I've experienced it myself, anytime we have some external way that a limiting, or not even a belief, but that something deep, it is something deep. Like, and it all comes down to feeling included or feeling rejected. We're, fear of failure, fear of success, loving ourselves, feeling like we're enough. Those are like really core, basic beliefs that a lot of us struggle with. And the way they manifest is like relationship issues, money issues, career issues, health issues, you name it, and it shows up that way. But it's not about the money, it's not about the relationship, it's not about the job, it's not about the health issue. It's about what's beneath that. It's about what's the story and the emotions that come up from that story. And we were just talking about the book You Can Heal Your Life by Louise, which is pretty much a classic, book. I didn't have it until just recently, and I'm reading. I was like, oh yeah, one would think that I basically just read that book and wrote my book based on her book, but it's all the same stuff. It's all the same stuff, and we just share it in different ways. So yeah, by the way, I was just thinking, if anybody, those of you who are listening, if you have a question you want to ask, feel free to type it in. Hopefully I'll see it. And then we can, get to those questions later, because we want to be able to answer any questions. Oh yeah, because yeah.
Well, and that comes back to the chicken hanging out next to the coop. We're wired for connection. We're wired for connection, and that community piece is so important. And when we operate from that space of abundance and connection and alignment and all of those things. I'm just going to approve somebody who's asking to get into the group.
Oh no, yeah, we're streaming this on the Souls Gathering to get it's Soulful Work Intuitive Consulting page on my business page.
Oh, there we are. Okay, I'm just looking to see if there's any questions. So I
Yeah,
don't see any questions.
yeah.
Yeah. So that question, that community, that wired for connection is strong, and anything that comes up against that, I was at the beach doing a VIP day with a client a month or so ago, and we were releasing things. It was a full moon, and we were releasing things on water soluble paper, and there was just so much resistance on what she wanted to release. And so I shifted and got her a new piece of this water soluble paper that hopefully isn't too harmful to our earth and the oceans. And I asked her to write down, what do you want to call in? So instead of starting with what do you want to release, I said, what do you want to attract? What do you want to bring into your life? Because that little inner child is like, no, I'm not going to give up this unless I can have this.
Yes,
like
right. That's right.
Friction. And so when she wrote down all the things that she wanted to call into her life, then I said, okay, now let's go back to what do you need to make space for in your life in order to be able to make, I'll trade you this for that. I'll trade you resentment for joy, or all of those different pieces. And so, and that's kind of what makes me think of this opportunity, because you might be afraid to pick it up. You might be afraid to go in and do this work. You might be, feel like you don't have the time or whatever those things are. But then when you look at, this supportive group and the different things that can happen because of, what happens when you say yes to yourself? What happens when the things that you want to manifest in your life come true?
Yep.
You an exact perfect example of this work in terms of, the stories in your book about how you manifested your husband, how you manifested the homestead you're living in, how you manifested the business that you are now in and operating and successfully, sharing with the world. Like, you have walked the path, you have done it, and look at all of the things that have been able to manifest because of what you were willing to let go.
Took time. Yeah, it took time. Took a lot of inner work.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think so you said something before. Oh yes, which I really wanted to mention. I wanted to go back to that, is like when we're, well, what's happening right now in a collective is so much about the shadows coming up. It's really intense time for a lot of people. It's like, we can, feel like almost paralyzed, like we just can't even do it anymore. It's too much. We've been through so much shit in the past few years. It's like, what else? Like, what else is coming our way? And it's just like, give us a break, right? And by the way, you can ask Spirit to, like, please slow it down. Like, I know I'm transmuting and breaking all these ancestral and past life patterns, but really, do I have to do it all at once? Like, can you just slow it down a little? And we have that they will listen. That's part of our free will. But anyway, it's like that's exactly what's happening. Anything that old stuff, or that it comes up, I hear this all the time. I see it all the time. It's like, I thought I dealt with that. Like, that issue, come on, I don't want to deal with that anymore. Like, I'm tired of talking about my family. I'm tired of dealing with my, whatever, relationship issues, or my blah, 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 blah. It's like, it gets like old. But this is the time when the light is shining, and we have to transmute. This is a lifetime that we chose to come into to break these patterns. And so we're working with the inner child. We're working with this delicate part of ourselves that, this is why New Year's resolutions don't work, because a lot of times it's about deprivation. Like, I'm just not going to do this anymore, or I'm going to, or it's like being slave drivers, like forcing ourselves to do something that, like you said, taking something away. And that does not work when we're talking about that little girl or little boy within us that has come up with a strategy to help us cope in our lives, like, to survive our families, to survive the world. The inner child's come up with strategies. Well, you got to push people away, Or we come up a lot. I see this a lot. Like we're the ones that like do everything for our families. We're the ones that will fix things. We hold the family together. I just had a client the other day share that. So we come up with these coping strategies and it works for a little while, and then, but oops, we start to develop this sort of relationship issue because we're always pushing people away, or we start to, not tend to ourselves, and we work constantly, and then we get sick because we're always trying to help others and not helping ourselves. And so it's like, okay, but the inner child doesn't understand that, if you're telling inner child, okay, we're not doing this anymore, you can't do that anymore. We can't just say, don't do it anymore. That's like, you know, they're eating, I don't know, they're eating an ice cream and you take it away and then they're like, but this is what makes me feel better. No, no, no. How about, an apple, something that they're going to like, or maybe, my kids wouldn't necessarily like an apple. My kids like frozen berries, like that's good. It's healthy, but it tastes good and it meets the need of that need that child is getting. So it's like, what is the need that coping strategy is meeting? Well, it's often feeling loved, feeling safe. And so connecting with that inner child, and I do this with people a lot in guided imagery. And of course, there's a lot of inner child work in the book of like really getting to, okay, what is that need that really subconscious archetypal part of me is looking to meet? And how can I meet that? And you ask them, like, what can I do to help you meet that need in another way? And often you can't just go straight to that place. It's like, how does it feel? Like, why is that a need? How does it feel? Well, it's because of this and it's because of that. And you process the feeling and release the feeling as much as we can. But replacing it with something that works for the inner child is absolutely essential. Otherwise, we can set as many goals as we want, and we're going to keep coming back to the same place.
Well, and I find also, so one of the things that's really cool about this book that really helps is that it puts you in it's a total shift in consciousness, but it puts you in a consciousness where you get to see these things playing out in real time. Like, so often, like, we're just oblivious, like, I had a client asking, what is shadow work? What does it even really mean to do shadow work? And I kind of had a walking example of it last week where with some disappointing news in my husband's business. And my inner child immediately got really scared. And she, started to like panic and all of that stuff. And my husband was like, it's okay, we'll figure it out, it'll be fine, it's not a big deal, da 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 da. And I could see myself up in the hallway looking in front of my husband, and I could see myself, and there was like door number 1 or door number 2. The door number 1 was great, we are held, we are protected, the universe always has our back, it always works out, it's gonna be fine, stressing about it doesn't serve anything, all the things. I saw door number 1. And then I saw door number 2, which was the old habit, the old pattern, the dive bar where the bartender in your brain serves up all the cortisol and adrenaline and all the junk that's like blah, blah, blah. And it's like, and I watched myself just choose the dive bar. Just bam. No, I didn't ask any questions. I just like, no, I'm going to be afraid. And he's like, but that doesn't help anything. That doesn't solve anything. It doesn't, but I still was like, very much attached to that old pattern, like an old pattern that got rehooked up in my brain, and I went with it. And then I went and took the dogs for a walk, and I was driving, and I was like, oh, and I could feel all the feels, and I was like, okay, what just happened? How did I shift from abundance and all of that stuff to scarcity and fear and all of that, those old neural pathways? And I saw how it all played out, and then I started to notice that I was beating myself up and all of that. And I was like, nope, that doesn't help either. And I just kind of slipped. I just went on an old neural pathway. I can right now unplug it and plug it back into whatever. But just as you explained, my inner child was like, no, this has always worked. This is the way we do it. And it's like, nope. And then I had to spend time with her.
Yeah.
Like, okay, we're all right. And explain the self-love, self-trust, self-compassion, self-acceptance. And then all of that alchemizes together in my alchemy of receiving to be that self-forgiveness. And so then it's like, okay, so I picked up an old habit. No big deal. Let me show you. Let's just trust here. Talk to her. Can we plug this back in and go back to that place of being trusted and trusting and being held and all of that and move through that. And there was still like this rant, I want to go back here,
Mm-hmm.
and I see it like when we're rewiring these neural pathways, they're deep, dark, cavernous, Grand Canyon style cracks. And we
Absolutely.
go
Yep.
in and we pull that neural pathway up and we lay it on like a very smooth piece of granite,
Yep.
which is very slippery and flat, and there isn't a lot of groove to catch
Mm-hmm.
that new neural pathway to
Mm-hmm.
make it easier to fall into, where this one is just open and vast.
Mm.
But we keep moving towards, water over stone, water over
Mm.
rock, just continuing to self-love, self-trust, self-compassion, self-acceptance, and to show up and to ask those questions. What do you need right now? How can I
Yep.
help you feel comfortable in this new path?
Yep.
I'm your highest self in this moment, and I'm here to say this is the direction
Yep.
that we need to go. Trust
Yep.
me.
Yep. It's certainly easier said than done. I was looking for a piece of paper to do a little demonstration because this is one of my favorite, when you talk about neural pathways, it's really true that when we, I don't think I have a piece of paper, but I'll just imagine. So the way that neural pathways work is like if you imagine if you folded a piece of paper, that seam that we fold a piece of paper on, the next time you open that piece of paper up, which way is it going to want to fold? Yeah, there you go. Like, so you open it up, and so which direction is it going to go? It's going to go that way. So you think so, and so what happens is that wait, don't fold it over yet. So go back to the original place. So that's a thought, all right. And so then move your hand down that crease again. It is the next time you think that same thought. Think that same thought again. Think it again. Think it again. It like gets embedded, and so it gets even harder, right?
It's like tingling.
So now open it up. So what we're doing is we're creating, what we do is we have to kind of force it. And the way to do that is program in new thoughts. Literally, it's like I know of no better way in the way, it's in the subconscious mind. So like it can feel forced, but through hypnotherapy, literally, there's this exercise in the book called Reframing Automatic Negative Thoughts. I cannot take credit for it. I learned it in my what the heck is it called? Whatever that program was, I did it. Southwest Institute for Integrative Healing Arts program. Well, I learned this. So you fold it the other way. And then, so that is reprogramming, putting in new thoughts, writing them down, posting it up on the wall, putting them in your phone to reprogram. And not just thoughts like, oh, everything's great and I'm amazing and everything's going to be wonderful, but I'm learning that I'm doing the best I can every day, that every day and every way I'm getting better and better. I fully and unconditionally love and accept myself. Some of these things that just as we hear those thoughts, we feel that. I mean, we really want to come up with specific ones that are specific to what the negative thought is. Is like I'm never gonna, make any more money, or I can't attract the relationship I want, or it's too hard to do this inner work, or whatever it is. Like some of these thoughts that can spin, and those thoughts, the more we think a thought like that, it can be very, very damaging. Anything that says like I can't, or I'm not, I don't, and I talk about this a lot, but it's because I think it's so important. It really speaks to everything. I think is like how do we even know, like how do we even do this, right? Well, a really easy way is like just being aware of like, okay, when something says I can't, or when it says I don't, immediately you can be like, that's my ego. That's not who I am. And that's this part of me that's afraid. That's whatever it is. There's doubting me. And so then we can say, okay, wait, here we go. Here's that thought again. I can, I'm not, it will never, I should. People might, could be the what ifs, what if that, what if that. And then we can say, wait, okay, let me just pause and like, here I hear that thought, here's coming in again. And by the way, as you know, Heidi, but a lot of other people probably know this too, it's just helpful to remind ourselves, how do we even identify the thoughts? Because a lot of times we just boom, 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 like, how do we even identify our thoughts? Quieting our mind, meditation helps train our brain to even identify them and just notice that we're having this thought again. And so when we notice it, we're like, all right, what's this about? Do I really believe this? Is this really true for me? Why are you here? We start to examine it like we're renting a car, that we're trying to inspect and just looking at it from all sides. And that starts the process of kind of separating from those thoughts. And when we can separate from them and reprogram and put new thoughts in, then the emotion that can come up from, if we're persistently saying, I can't do this, I'm never going to be able to blah, 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 I'm not this. What happens is there's an emotion of that we just feel crappy about ourselves. Like we eventually start to feel depressed or angry or frustrated or guilty or shame. And then those feelings, those emotions can start to create low vibrations in our bodies, and they can start to create illness. They can create all kinds of things. So when we can change the thoughts and put new ones in, then the emotions will change. And then everything changes. It changes our vibrational state. It all comes down to vibration. Anyway, my dog's barking. I'll mute myself for a minute.
No, Molly. You're preaching. I think their dogs are like, yes, preach, Mama, preach. You're preaching. No, it's true. It's all right. It's all right. It's just Laura. She was welcome to the family home. It's all set. Yeah, I mean, it's all such good medicine, and doing it in a way that, in your book, just it's like the step support to, and it's a practice, right? I mean, that's what I love about your book is that it's not something you like really. You can start it start to finish and read it and all of that, which I've done, and then you can also go through and really do the exercises one by one, and having the support to do the exercises one by one, and the practice of doing the exercises and the practice. In terms of like I've been playing with the quiet in the mind, and now I feel like I started out with a couple of minutes, and now when I practice it and I'm conscious of it, I feel like I'm quieting the mind all the time.
Yeah.
Because it just becomes part of who we are and what you do. And then I notice I'm getting a little chaotic. It's like, oh, whoops, I kind of put that practice down. I've been doing other things. And then, go back to the, I'm just going to do 5 minutes a day or 3 minutes a day. And then my body remembers, like our bodies remember just like this piece of paper in the fold.
Yep.
And all of the ways our bodies remember the good stuff as much as they do the bad stuff. We just have to give them the good stuff to remember to then be able to have that be the easier way to fold than the alternatives that we've learned through the collective and individual wounding.
Yep.
We're all in right now.
And sometimes it helps to, sometimes people get annoyed when I always suggest this, but it works for me, and I think it works for a lot of people, is to write it down. Because some of us have blocks, like the words meditation or even the word writing, like it creates, if we hear, it can create some, memories of when we were in school and we were forced to write, or when we hear, oh, you should meditate, and it seems like another thing you're supposed to be doing, you're not doing, then you feel bad about yourself, So, but the reason I'm such a fan of writing is that when we, and it's really, let's call it something by something else to kind of take its negative association away, like just scribble something on paper, like if you do quiet your mind, it's like write down what happened, like what it felt like, because the ego will try to come up with reasons to prevent us from doing things that are, again, unfamiliar or new, out of a way of protecting us, keeping us in our comfort zone. This is what's familiar, this is what you know, so keep doing this because that will keep us safe. So if we write it down, like, well, I quieted my mind for a few minutes and I just brought in light, I listened to the birds, and I felt really good. I felt a sense of peace. And then we go back the next day, and then so we see it, and it makes it more real, because the ego will be like, oh, what's the point? It's not doing anything. You're too busy. You don't have time, or it doesn't really work. But then you're like, well, wait. I have some evidence that it did bring this sense of peace. And I think quieting the mind is just interesting. I had a client the other day. I was about to say, quieting the mind is really the, one thing that I think we can do that can really help us is start that practice of meditation, because it trains our brains to notice the ego, to then do all these things we were just talking about, to really step into our higher selves. But it's not always enough, oh man, it's hard for me to say that because I believe it's so important. But I had a client the other day who he's quieting his mind regularly, and that's helping him. But there's something in the subconscious that was, that was, like making him feel stuck. And he was reliving out these patterns based on the same things, like the inner child's coping and not able to really get to it. He's been to years of therapy. And as much as therapy is wonderful in many ways, what happens often with talk therapy, not all, cognitive behavioral therapy is really powerful. I've heard really good things about EMDR. But a lot of just, talk therapy is only working with the conscious mind. And these things that we're talking about are held in the subconscious. And it's beneath the surface. We can't see it. And our ego and our conscious mind, held in our conscious mind, will protect us from even going there. So we're not even aware that there's like this story that's running our lives because it's held in the subconscious mind. So one of the only ways to access it is by going into an altered state of consciousness through guided imagery, through hypnotherapy. I do those things for people, as many of you know. The Akashic Records is another way to kind of, if people want to learn. I teach a little bit of it in my book. I teach it in the book. It's not always, it can be hard to, really go into it just by reading about it. And it's really more powerful to experience it in a class. But it's a way to get information about our soul in a different dimensional space. So, I think all this stuff it takes time. It definitely takes time, and it can be exhausting when we think, oh man, this all sounds like a lot of work. I gotta keep doing, I gotta do this, and I gotta do that, and I gotta do that, and I gotta do that. But it really doesn't need to be that way. It can be kind of enjoyable and it does help us feel better, when we do start to just give ourselves permission to just start to look at some things. And really, it's just the question is like, what am I meant to be learning here? Just asking like this open question. Like I feel I'm having this experience in my life. There's a situation with this person. There's something that happened and I don't understand why. And we can't control things that happen, but we can say, well, what am I meant to be learning from this? And that's where it begins, right? That's where that whole process of self-inquiry and everything comes into, or everything happens for a reason. I firmly believe that to help us, our souls choose a lot of the situations we come into. Not everything. There's definitely free will. I think it's both. Divine soul contract stuff, free fate, destiny, and free will choices that create things that we never expected. But whatever it is, like just saying, okay, the point of living this life, the reason we incarnate is in each body, each time, is to become the highest and best version of ourselves. It's our self-actualization. And that's just really saying, well, maybe I didn't do it so well that time, that past experience, or in that past life, or maybe I made a mistake, but it doesn't mean I'm bad. Doesn't mean I need to be ashamed for the rest of my life or punish myself. It just means I'm human and I'm doing the best I can. And my parents were doing the best they could with the tools they had, and we forgive them and we cut cords and we release attachment and resentment because man, I could go on forever and ever and ever, but there's a lot.
Collective and individual wounds, and I think shame is probably one of the greatest ones that
Yeah.
we heal.
Yeah.
Because we're taught that we should
Yep.
feel shame.
Yep.
And, it's one
Yep.
of the low vibrations, most toxic.
A lot of religious programming around there. I hear a lot of Catholic guilt that comes up.
You should be ashamed of
Yes.
yourself. No.
Shamed. Yes.
No.
Yep.
No, that's not.
Yep.
That's not.
Yep. We could go into that too with like the, just the connection with God, that you're being punished or you're a sinner and all that stuff. It's like so not helpful, and it creates a lot of need for healing.
All coming up right now to be healed.
Yes.
We call in those divine feminine energies and the divine masculine energies and re-invert all of the inversions that
Yep.
have been, whatever in the world. So
Yep.
that having a community to talk this through, and I think that's what some of the support that we're going to be doing in this course, right? So let's talk about
Yeah.
a little bit of format of what we're going to do here.
Yep.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to hold the space for these beautiful souls.
Yeah, this is the first time Heidi and I've done something like this, but it makes perfect sense. We're doing it together. So Heidi's gift, one of Heidi's gifts is really holding space for people, one of your gifts. And just as you've done for me, just listening and meeting people where they're at. And you're so intuitive and you have just a really good gauge of what to say and how to say it and when to say it, which not everybody does. And you really have that gift. So that's, for those of you listening, that's what Heidi's going to be doing is meeting, holding space for, there's 8 people right now. There's probably, there's space for a few more, every month. And just people, sharing like, well, I've been struggling with this in the book, or I've in your life, I've been working on my inner child and this is what's been coming up, or I feel like I've been procrastinating on doing some meditation and I don't know why. And sharing in that way with a group of other people going through the same experiences you are, with somebody like Heidi who's been through it, like what it's like. You've worked with me individually and you've read the book and you've done this soul work. And of course, you're still doing it. I'm still doing it. We're all still doing it. Otherwise, we wouldn't be human. We just drop dead tomorrow. We'd be done. Hopefully we won't, because I would like to be here. I've got some more work to do.
I just started to understand it all now. I feel happy. I feel more joy in my body than I've ever felt ever. I just had the best summer of my life. Like I kept looking back and being like, was there ever a better summer? And I just kept flipping through the file of facts of all the different versions of myself, and no, because never did I have what I have right now in terms of freedom and knowing and
Yeah,
trust.
that's beautiful.
It's really, and then as fall comes, it's like, oh, but don't want summer, but I can have the best fall ever.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
we just keep it going.
Yeah. There's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, and I've always been a coach, a ski coach, a swim coach, a field hockey coach. So, meet once a month with these women that are men too. I don't know.
Not yet. There might be.
But these people, these
Yeah.
kids are coming and want to do this work and just kicking a ball around on the field. I don't
Yeah.
have it all figured out. I know your work. I know the book. I know all of that. But more what I love is to just get on the field and say, here's what was working for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's how I came up with that. Here's my experience with that. Let me show you. Do you want to try it? Or do you have, maybe you dribble a little differently, or you want this or that? So I'm really excited. And then the other week that they meet in the month, they're going to
Will be with me.
You're going to do things and
Yep.
meditation and writing exercises and the sort of the teaching practice
Yep.
in real time.
Yeah, we meet twice a month, once with Heidi, once with me, for an hour and a half with me. And really what I want to do is hold space for people in a different way. So those of you who have the book or you want to get it, and I certainly did this. I was doing this just the other day. We might read a little bit, but we skip over the writing exercises because I don't want to do that. So that's what this, the time together with me would be designed to actually sit down. I'm going to be picking out some of the most powerful ones, creating a future self vision, coming up with a quieting the mind practice. What are the automatic negative thoughts? Working with the inner critic, and some of the ones that are the hardest to do because they're so important and the ego knows that. So, and doing them in a group. And then of course, before we do them, I'll set the stage to connect with our subconscious mind through guided meditation, bringing in light. I always like to bring in angels and sort of, divine energy to help us go in there. And it really is more powerful that we feel safe, we feel held, our inner child is held. We have some guides and divine beings of light there helping us, guide us through the process. And then, I'll be answering any questions people have about the class. Let me just share actually a little bit of what it's going to look like, because this is...
Are you going to show them the teachables?
Yes, yeah. So here's what it actually looks like. This is the intro video, but this is the first month. I don't know. Can you see it here?
Yeah.
So this, for instance, is, month 1, Soulful Work Method and Quieting the Mind. So there's different videos I put in. These are just supplementary things that kind of go along with the flow of the book. guided meditations, some other resources. And in month 2, we'll be talking about divine laws in your future self. And there's some, and of course, this is the sequence of the chapters. So there's a few, it's 2 chapters per month, really. So the next few chapters are about divine laws in your future self. There's some supplementary handouts that aren't in the book. I think is really cool, your personality type. I like to put the Rainbow Connection song in there. I just love that song. Kermit, I don't know if it's a Kermit version, but it might be something like that. And then month 3 is ego, and I might add a few more things in here, but I'm still building it. But this is all about separating from the ego, some guided meditations, some additional resources. Then moving through the inner critic and the inner child, some other meditations. And then we move into how to connect with our higher selves and activate our intuition. And so there's different videos. There's a lot in here. Past lives, the Akashic Records, angels, ascended masters, spirit animals, healing, past life healing. So you have a lot of choices, creating a sacred space to kind of, give you some supplementary things, some books I really like. And then the last month is about clearing and protecting our energy. And this is super important because as the more of us become empathic, as a lot of us are, the more we ascend, the more we move into our light bodies, the more we move into 5th dimensional consciousness, which is, being guided by our higher selves, connecting with all that is, connecting with each other, just this really beautiful new earth way of living in oneness. We become more sensitive, and we've got to protect ourselves from some low vibrational stuff out there. So this will teach you a little bit more about how to do that. And there's some really cool meditations I like, a few videos, chakra clearings. And then I put in a bonus here about spiritual awakening and working with multidimensional beings like Pleiadians, different Arcturians, and we get into like true history of humanity, the Anunnaki. It gets deep, man. It gets deep. So so that's just the platform. That's like the supplement. This is here's if you want to check out the class. Here's the website for it. It's this kind of guides you through. There's a picture of us. What it looks like. There's a little video I put about the course, what we're going to be doing. The setting, this stage is based on the book. I talk a little bit how to move through the book. There's a beautiful picture of Heidi. And then we kind of, if you want to learn more about exactly what we're going to be covering, there's a little more information there. And then this is just kind of what I showed you. I'll be talking to people as a, individual, offering an individual call. Everybody who does this class, there's a discount for individual sessions, which sometimes the book isn't enough. Sometimes it's like we're reading it and it's great and it's helpful. Even in doing a work in the group isn't always enough because it can get real personal. Like this stuff is deep, it's very deep and it's intense. And so sometimes, for me, I had to do one-on-one work with my former life coach. And with you, I do it with you, Heidi, to really, I'm not going to share some of that stuff with the group. I'm naturally introverted, and so sometimes we do need to really get into the subconscious. I'll do hypnotherapy with somebody, or I'll do an Akashic Records reading, or I'll do that ego work, helping somebody pull out the thoughts. It can be really hard to get into our own heads and dissect what our thoughts are that are, not helpful. So that is an option. The other thing is that in this, those people who are in this into the light class, I'm offering free membership in this New Earth Collective, which is a community of, awakening light workers who we meet regularly, we learn together, we support each other. We meet virtually and in person. There's a lot of different resources there, kind of like I showed you on a lot of different topics, wilderness skills, craniosacral therapy, making apple cider vinegar. Like these are things that we're doing. We're doing a Mother Mary activation, like all kinds of things.
Homesteading 101.
Yeah, homesteading, and yeah, it's great. We're gonna be doing art in nature, doing intuitive art, and doing some mindful walking. It's just really cool things we do together, and we talk about and we share like, wow, this is what I'm experiencing. Are you experiencing this? Yes. Supporting each other. So that kind of sums it up. And, hopefully in this class, after doing it, you'll feel that, why are we even doing this stuff in the first place? Well, so we can feel better, so we can feel a sense of peace and of alignment and that we're connected with our higher self. It doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. It doesn't mean like, oh yeah, everything, now my life is amazing. It just, we know why when we experience something, the cycle of life, ups and downs, we know that there's a reason, we have tools to move through it. And that's what this book is really about, like tools to move through it. And we feel that we're working we have like a purpose that we're working toward, and we're in the flow of our highest selves. So it's just going to be a lot of fun to do that. I can't wait.
So true. I mean, there's so much there. I just am like, again, like I can't wait because there's just so much more stuff, and it's like reminding me of all the stuff that went through in the book and all the different places, and I've forgotten about the energetic hygiene, the protecting the light kind of pieces of it. And I remember sitting on your back deck of your all the chapters all printed out. We were kind of puzzling it all together and just like having a moment of book baby magic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's so, while this summer was one of, it was the best summer I think I've ever felt in my body. Also one of the hardest. Like it there's a benefit to being able to feel embodied enough, connected enough, aligned enough, conscious enough, in your life purpose enough to be able to hold both.
Yeah. Yep.
To be able to hold the original joy and the
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
to be able to like reweave and heal and transmute and release and
Yep.
integrate in all of the ways, so that it stands you up in a way that makes it harder for you to get knocked down.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of saying it.
Standing, we do a lot of qigong, and standing, like we can stand sort of tiptoe, we can stand hunched up, but it's easy to get knocked over. But when like a tree, when you're there, you're rooted and connected so evenly between heaven and earth, you can't.
Yep.
You might get a little, but you stay with
Yep.
yourself.
Yep.
You lose as much time.
Yep.
It's just.
It's like the mountain. It's a tree or a mountain analogy. Like a mountain. I this with my kids the other day, in one of our beginning of our homeschool. It's like we just close our eyes and we imagine that we were actually. I think Aaron came up with it, even though and it is a thing. Like, he just came up. He's like, I'm going to be a mountain, and he's like, and I was like, oh my God, yes, because there's wind that blows up the mountain, or there's rain you get pelted with, but no matter what, the mountain is solid. The mountain does not fall over. The mountain doesn't crumble. And that's how we can be, like, no matter what gets thrown at us, we have that inner sense of knowing that, of who we are, and that really it's that inner light of God, of source energy, that it's within us. And no matter what happens, we know we're still whole, we know we're still loved. And honestly, I'm just going to say this because I meant to say it earlier, but I was reading this the other day, and it's so important, and it's been coming up a lot, is that it's all about loving ourselves. Everything comes down to that. Like, just how can we fully accept and love ourselves unconditionally? Like, how can we look in the mirror? This is hard for people. And I was just reading about this in You Can Heal Your Life, and I was like, oh yeah, I suggest people do that, and they can't stand it when I say it. They never like it. They really don't like it. I love you. I unconditionally love and accept you. Saying that to ourselves in the mirror can be really, really hard, but that's what we're being asked to do. And when we can love ourselves in that way, then we can, like, you get all this programming that comes in. Oh, it's selfish. You're just thinking of yourself. Blah blah blah. Like, and it's like, but how can we fully unconditionally love somebody else if we can't even love ourselves first? So it's like it comes in first. We experience it, we feel it, and then we can, model it, or teach it or embody it, at least for others. It's so important, and that's really, that's where we're going. That's what we're being asked to do, to help bring our planet into higher states of consciousness, into the fifth dimension. That's what this is all about, really. If we sum it up, right?
Well, and it's true, and you get to continue it, deepen it, start it, open it, no matter where you are on the path. Whether you've been doing this a long time, or whether you're just realizing, oh my gosh, Erin, I don't know anything, I don't connect to any of this, but there's something in my heart telling me that this is calling to me, and you have the book. or you want to engage in the book, or if you've been on this for the last 10 years and you're just deepening your experience, that next level is an opportunity in this course.
Yeah.
$100 a month, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
that's not a lot of money
Right.
for the
Right.
return that you can get with starting with that one piece, and then the rest just opens and opens and opens. And the next step gets revealed, and the next step gets revealed, and the next layer gets peeled off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So it's already 8 o'clock, and I know that we said we were going for an hour. We could probably talk all night. It's just so awesome to talk. And thank you all for being here. For those of you who came and listened with us, and thank you, Heidi, for being here. And if you have any questions for me or for Heidi, feel free to reach out about the class or about anything we've talked about. I'm happy to help. So, we all we're in this. I don't want to say we're in this together. We're here for a reason. That's been used and
Chickens together.
Yes, we're all trying to tend to our own inner chickens and to other people's inner chickens.
This is the alchemy of receiving, that I do. It's like when we self-love, self-trust, self-compassion, self-acceptance, and then we get our fill in our innermost concentric circle. I have a different set of concentric circles, but and then we get to send it out to the chicken and to my dogs and to my husband and whatever else.
Yes.
We fill up, it overflows.
Absolutely.
And as we bring it out into the next level, that fills us up, and then we go through the signs and synchronicities, and we follow the plant wisdom and the animal signs and all that, and then we bring it back into ourselves, and then we build it up enough that it goes to that next level.
Yep.
Or my clients and extended family and my neighborhood and whatever, and then to like out to the most outer, which is the collective as a whole, the universal divine life that we are all a part of, and it just goes in and out and around and in and out and around.
Yeah. Just like all those lights behind you, like that's what's happening. One by one, is all these souls on the planet begin to embody this light. We can't fully embody this light and exude this light until we clear the shadows. And so that's literally, if I could look at things in this, different sort of, X-ray vision and zoom out, on Earth, we would be seeing that, all these people lighting up, and that's how we move ourselves into, out of all the craziness, out of the division, out of the fear and then separation of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. So it's really important. And we're just, you and I are just playing our part, here to share light, here to be of service. So many blessings to everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Heidi. And we'll talk to you all soon. Bye.